Welcome to Construction Cashflow. I'm your host, Stu Davidson, and if you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode.
The minute you start to say no to people, here's what's going to happen. You're going to realize real quick that lots of people in your circle had conditions on their relationship with you. I don't want to upset the client because it's the only contract I've got, and if I lose that contract, I'm stuck. If you don't get real with what you really want out of life, there's a saying, if you don't know what you stand for, you fall for something else. I've trained Sparkies, I've trained builders, I've trained lots of people, and I always tell them, like, you're not going to compete on price with people. Don't even go there. Compete on value. What are you bringing to the equation? For people who work self-employed, work for themselves, whatever it might be, they're giving their families what's left of them, not the best of them. Once you sit down and get super clear of what you want and what you don't want anymore, that becomes your GPS. You've got to love yourself enough to protect your mental well-being, protect your space, and protect your time and energy. My big passion is training and mentoring people. As I'm an ex-psychiatric nurse, one of my biggest passions is actually your mental well-being. And I think personally, the mental well-being of entrepreneurial people is neglected. And people don't look into it enough. And I think there are probably a lot of entrepreneurial people out there that are depressed and don't even know they're depressed. And see that themselves as providers for their family. And, well, with all due respect, unless you are producing assets for them to rely on the income off of that rather than you being the asset, then you're not actually an asset. You are a liability, and it's a dangerous place to be in. And I'm saying that to everyone so that you wake up and you do something different right now. Look after yourself before it's too late. And then when you're on your own, it creates this internal conflict, and you start resenting what you've done. And suddenly you start to fall out of love with your work. You start to fall out of love with your clients. And before you know it, just spiraling out of control. Your relationships are out of sync, your health is out of sync, and everything's just falling apart. And all because we don't love ourselves enough to say no. We don't love ourselves enough to step back and fill our own cup up and recharge our own, batteries and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, if your mobile phone ran out of battery right now, you'd really plug it in, wouldn't you? Just how many times do you stop to plug yourself in?
In this show, we ask our guests to tell us their story. Tell us a little bit about their background, how they got to where they are today, how they developed their product, their services, their ideas. And we discuss how that can affect construction cash flow and other areas of construction. And also to give us an idea of how we might make things better and give you a few tips and ideas to take away with you. And listen to the end where you'll find out more about them, more about our guests, about what motivates them, what inspires them, and hopefully that'll inspire you too. And always, don't forget to hit the subscribe button so you don't miss another episode. In this episode, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Jessen James. Jessen started out as a psychiatric nurse, building his department up in the private sector to a multi-million-pound business. Since then, Jessen has gone on to become a world-renowned international speaker, mentor and coach. He coaches on mindset, public speaking and business. And so, without further ado, it's my pleasure to introduce you to Jessen James. Hi Jessen, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm awesome, thank you, Stu. Thank you for having me, it's a pleasure.
Tell us your story, how you got to where you are now, some of the successes and challenges you faced along the way.
Yeah, well, I'm born to Mauritian parents who came over from Mauritius in the sort of mid 70s, So I was born in the 80s and grew up in East London, born and bred, and had an interesting upbringing. Let's put it that way. We didn't have much. Mum and Dad were always working all the time. We never ran out of food. We always had food on our table, with a roof over our head, but never had the finer things in life, as it were. And I used to wear secondhand clothes, hand-me-downs from my brother, cheapest of the cheapest trainers and whatnot, when all my friends were wearing Reebok Classics and Nike Air and all that kind of stuff. And if I'm very honest, I got bullied at a young age. Got bullied at a young age for how I looked, the clothes, and unfortunately back then, and I know it still happens now, but it was more prevalent back then, for the colour of my skin. A lot of these things happen when you're growing up, and that was all happening, to me at a very young age. And I remember, as a 7-year-old boy, getting subjected to stuff like this, thinking like, what's as a kid, you don't have any filters, you don't think like people are bad, and you're trying to figure out why is this happening to you, why are people being mean. But I guess what it sparked off in me were two things. One, the desire to want more and go and get it yourself, and I didn't know it at that age, but I just sparked this little desire in me to figure out how can I achieve more for myself, because my parents couldn't afford to give me that stuff. And two, I suppose when you go through extreme pain and suffering, it also gives birth to love. And what I mean by that is, you don't like seeing other people suffer. So I've had it instilled in me from a young age to help other people and look at how I can help myself as well. So that desire, I suppose, to help others, again, as a 7-year-old, after experiencing all this, it helped me go and help other people who were kind of, whether it's bullied or left to one side, And I remember as a kid helping out this other 7-year-old kid who used to come to school, and I have no idea how it happened, but he used to come to school with no food, no packed lunch, no nothing. I don't know how this happened. But I just remember me giving him my sandwiches every day because he didn't have any food. And I used to go home hungry, not say anything to my mum because I thought I'd get in trouble. And I did it for 2 weeks, and then second week I just couldn't take it anymore. I went home and said, "Mum, I'm starving." She said, "Well, do you not have lunch at school? What's going on?" And I told her what I'd been doing. So I did get in trouble, Stu, but for the wrong reasons, for not telling her sooner, because she started packing double sandwiches for me to bring for this kid. So I've always been helping people since that young age. I've always wanted to help people, So I guess that's kind of like my upbringing, as it were, to get me to where, to the point where I felt that it sparked something inside of me, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And your mum sounds like an incredible person. For her to double up on the sandwiches and say you should have told me earlier, I can see where some of your love comes from, because it oozes out of you, actually.
Thank you.
It's really inspiring and attractive, and not something you often see. And I love that in you, Jessen.
Thank you.
Yeah. What an amazing story. And so you progressed and become an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I mean, it didn't happen overnight, obviously, but and you've touched on something that's important there. My parents, they taught me something earlier on. Like, I'm going to be honest, I didn't learn very good money mindset from my parents, because it was very much working, don't get into debt, pay your bills, work hard, all that kind of stuff, which is probably not the mindset I have today. However, one thing I did pick up from my mum and dad were incredible values around look after people, be a good human being, care about others. I learned that from my parents at an early age. Like, my mum and dad would give someone their last fiver, and so would I. It's like it's that mentality, and you always, probably what it's like in the UK growing up around the 80s and how life was back then. Everyone helps each other. You help your neighbour. You can leave your front door open. You could do all the good luck doing that now. But those values that were instilled in us as kids, I think is missing in society nowadays, big time. However, that's always stuck with me, and so I always teach people this: like, learn to make someone else's life better, and you'll never worry about money again. And that's from giving, So for me, I just grew up with this whole give mentality. Give. How can you help? How can you solve problems? And I was fascinated by doing stuff for myself, namely trying to earn an income, So I started my first business when I was 11 years old. And that was selling. I went to Mauritius for the first time with my parents, and I bought I smuggled back these little Chinese firecrackers. I just kind of put them into my mum's suitcase and got them over to the UK, and then snuck them back out before she was looking. And then I sold them in the playground at school. And it was going okay for about a week until someone decided to throw some off the top of a double-decker bus, and in his uniform.
Oh.
So the public saw who it was, got grassed up to the school, and he grassed up who his dealer was, and that was me. So that got shut down. That got shut down real quick. And then about sort of 14, 15, 13, I started selling stuff like drinks, sweets, chocolates, because the school had a tuck shop. And I thought, well, I could do that. So I used to get them from the shop and get some from my mum, because she used to stock up on this stuff, and I used to bring them in my bag and sell them in the playground. And that got shut down as well, because they found out that I was doing that and I wasn't supposed to be. So I'm not a big advocate right now for business, because I've got 2 businesses shut down already. And then the third thing that I did at 15 years old is when mobile phones started first getting popular. I remember walking down East Ham High Street in East London and walking to one of these independent mobile phone stores and blagging the owner to give me this massive bag full of accessories for the old Nokia phones, the ones that you could change the face and the aerials and all that jazz.
Yeah, I remember those.
Yeah, and he gave me this big bag of accessories, and I said, look, I'll sell them and I'll bring the money back, and we can split it or whatever it might be. And I remember taking these to school. I sold the whole lot. I came back, gave him a wad of cash, and I think he peeled off like a tenner and goes, here you go. And I went, what? After all of that, I get. But then on reflection, obviously I didn't think it at the time, but as I got older, on reflection, I know what happened in that situation. And if anyone's listening, that let this be a lesson. He or she who brings the most value to any equation gets paid the most. So it was his stock, which he paid for and put the risk up for, put the cash up for. It was his shop, which he pays rent on and took the risk up for. He gave his stock to a random 15-year-old boy from East London. Anything could have happened to that. So he brought the most value to that equation. I was just a transactional part of it. But again, looking back on it, that's a valuable lesson to learn in life and business. If right now you're not getting paid what you work, you've got to ask yourself, how much value am I bringing to any equation? Because the more value you bring to any situation, the more you can charge. So a lot of your followers are people who are in the construction industry or service-based industry, and you're competing against everybody else. So you can't really compete on price all the time. You're going to turn into a price war. How much are you going to cut? How much are you? And you know what it's like in construction. People would love to get a few different quotes so you can play each other off. The next person or wherever it might be. So I always tell people, and I've trained Sparkies, I've trained builders, I've trained lots of people, and I always tell them, like, you're not going to compete on price with people. Don't even go there. Compete on value. And what are you bringing to the equation? Train your prospect to understand you get what you pay for. And so for me, I learned a lot about this, and then went through college and all that kind of jazz. Ended up actually training as a psychiatric nurse. For people who don't know, I used to be a psychiatric nurse. But when I qualified as a nurse at 24 years old, I thought, you know what, sod it. I want to go give business a go. I thought I'd give it a go before I go into nursing properly and see what happens. And I did. I launched my first company, and unfortunately made a whopping minus 65 grand in 3 months. It's hard. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. And for your listeners, they'll probably understand why. I actually started a tile and bathroom store, and we had wholesale and we had retail. And what was a freaking nurse doing opening one of those? I had zero experience in that industry, but a friend of mine said we can get stuff cheap from China, bring it over here and sell it, and whatever it might be. And we got ripped off. We got sold dud stock. And the stock that we could salvage, we couldn't sell it because it wasn't our sector. I didn't know what I was doing. We got taken out by all the other big players in the game, So again, lesson learned. Stay in your lane. Do what you know. I meet a lot of people trying to start businesses, and they come up with these wacky ideas, and they've got zero experience in them. So you're not going to get anywhere. Use what you already know. What do you already know, and double down on that. So I did. I went into nursing. Had quite a short but decorated career, as it were. I worked in the private sector, and in the private sector you climb the ranks quite quickly. So I became the youngest ward manager in the UK at 27 years old. But when you're a ward manager in the private sector, you also get given sales targets, so you still need to look after your patients, look after your department, and sell. But that was fine because I enjoyed entrepreneurship. So I made my employer £6.5 million in 2 years, selling beds to the NHS, contracts and all that kind of stuff. And then sadly, For everyone who's young enough to remember the recession in 2009, 2008, 2009, unfortunately, they told me they don't need me anymore. And just like that, my job was taken away from me. And I'm pretty sure people listening can probably recall a time in their life where they felt a little bit betrayed or let down or stabbed in the back, by someone or something. And it's how I felt at the time. But I'm a big believer, again, if you're listening to this and you're going through hardship, everything's happening for you, not to you. Because that set me free in a way, because I thought, you know what, I'm not going to work for anyone anymore. I'm going to go and start my own business. Again, this time I thought I'd do what I know, which is healthcare. So I launched my own healthcare company, supported living service for adults in the community. And it wasn't easy. I'm not saying it was easy. I worked really hard, but the long and short of it is that business made me financially free at the age of 31 and a millionaire 2 years later, which isn't bad for a nurse who got fired, So it's been hard. Yeah, it's not been an easy journey. I mean, that was the kind of the condensed version, although it sounded like I was speaking for half an hour. But it's been quite a journey. It has, yeah.
Oh, amazing value in there. And what I love, Jessen, is that you've maintained the values that you developed when you was younger, and the values that were passed on from your parents. You've maintained those values right the way through. And sometimes as a business owner, it's you get wrapped up in the business side of it and you kind of lose sight of your own identity.
Yeah.
I know in the profession, so I came from a profession, sometimes if I was called a quantity surveyor, I would identify as a quantity surveyor and kind of lose sight of my own kind of values. And it can be like that in the construction industry quite a lot. It's quite brutal and quite contractual and quite adversarial. And if you've got values that are non-confrontational, you're good at what you do, you want to bring value to the work you do, it's very contractual, and you can lose sight of that. And I think it's an amazing thing that you've done you've had various different types of businesses. You've learned a lot through the ones that have failed, and then you've become very, very successful. And one thread that I see when you're speaking is that you've kept to your values throughout it all. How do you do that?
Yeah, well, thank you. That's really kind. And I'll tell you how I do it is take time out to actually understand what your values are. So a lot of the times, business owners, entrepreneurial people, we have a higher value of freedom, or we say we do, because we want to work for ourselves. And let's be honest, if you as an employer or a business owner, whatever it might be, you need that element of freedom in your life, because that's why you want to do it. However, our values of safety and security outweigh our values of freedom. So whilst we want freedom, we'll probably do things that we don't like because we don't want to rock the boat. So for example, I don't want to upset the client because it's the only contract I've got, and if I lose that contract, I'm stuffed. So what they're saying to me doesn't align with my values, and I feel like I've got a job anyway. But I value being safe more than being free. And this is why people stay in jobs they don't like, because it's safe. They want to be free from it, but they stay. So they value safety more than their freedom. People stay in relationships that they're not happy in when they want to be free. Why? Because it's steady Eddie, don't rock the boat. So I think if you don't get real with what you really want out of life, there's a saying, if you don't know what you stand for, you fall for something else. And that's the truth. So for me, how I've stayed on track, as it were, is by getting clear with what I want. What are my values? What's important to me? And this, anyone listening to that, once you sit down and get super clear of what you want and what you don't want anymore, that becomes your GPS. It becomes your sat nav. It becomes your guide. You'll know what to say no to, what to say yes to. You'll know what to show up for, what not to show up for. You'll know how much time to give something versus not giving it any time at all. And because people are literally living out of control right now, they don't know what they want. They've got no clue what their values are. They've got no sense of direction. So they're just going wherever the wind takes them. And that's, for me, I did that for many years, and it doesn't serve you. It doesn't get you anywhere. In fact, it just makes you more unhappy. So what's the point? I think, people talk about finding your life purpose. Everyone find your life purpose. Our primary purpose on this freaking earth is to be happy. That's your primary purpose. Whatever else comes after that, helping other people, changing the world, making it a better place, looking after your family, whatever, those are secondary. Your primary purpose is to be happy. And for many people, I'd go as far as saying at least 60 to 70, if not 80% of the population are not happy with what they do for a living right now.
Amazing. I think you're right. And what an amazing message. And I think that message goes across all sectors, all businesses.
Yeah.
Particularly in construction, there's a lot of stress, people kind of not really knowing where they're going with things.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of mental health issues amongst business owners in construction, because it is it can be a brutal industry. And the advice for them to sit down and take stock and think about their values, and then take a step back, a deep breath, and then align. And I like what you said about knowing when to say yes and no, because sometimes I think we say yes too many times out of fear. How do you think we all got those subtle fears? There's the big fears that we can all identify, but those very subtle things where I'm saying yes when I mean no. I mean, how can we kind of address kind of that sort of thing, that the more subtle fears that build up over time?
Again, it's not an overnight fix, because what I'm about to say to people, especially in the construction industry, you might think it's a bit woo-woo and tree huggy, but the truth of the matter is, if you don't love yourself, you're going to say yes to everyone. And what I mean by that is, you've got to love yourself enough to protect your mental well-being, protect your space, and protect your time and energy. Especially as an entrepreneurial person, you've got so many demands on your time. You've got your team members, you've got your clients, you've got bills to pay, you've got your family that you've got to provide for and support for, and everything falls on your shoulders as an entrepreneurial person. And every supporter needs a supporter. You spend so much time trying to support everybody else, but that includes pleasing others and saying yes all the time. And what happens then is, you say yes to everyone, and then when you're on your own, it creates this internal conflict, and you start resenting what you've done. And suddenly you start to fall out of love with your work. You start to fall out of love with your clients. And before you know it, just spiraling out of control. Your relationships are out of sync. Your health is out of sync, and everything's just falling apart. And all because we don't love ourselves enough to say no. We don't love ourselves enough to step back and fill our own cup up and recharge our own, batteries and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, if your mobile phone ran out of battery right now, you'd really plug it in, wouldn't you? But
yeah, exactly.
How many times do you stop to plug yourself in? Most people don't. And that needs to happen more, I'd say, for entrepreneurial people than people working a job, with all due respect. Because when you've got a job, you get your annual leave, you get your sick pay, you get your tidy little pension, you get to switch off when you switch off, you clock off at 5, you don't worry about a thing until you're back in the office the next day. Whereas an entrepreneurial person doesn't switch off. There's no annual leave. There's no sick pay. There's no open hours, close hours. You could do a whole day at the office and then come back and do another shift at home, because do all the stuff that you haven't done in the day. So when are you going to stop? And that means learn to say no. And my advice to anyone listening to this right now, the minute you start to say no to people, here's what's going to happen. You're going to realize real quick that lots of people in your circle had conditions on their relationship with you. And that basically means, Stu's changed. Stu's this, Stu's that. He used to say yes. He's always been out of order now. So you were only happy because I played your game. So you don't really like me, basically. You just like me because I play your game, and because I've decided to fill my own cup for a change, I'm now a bad person, and you've forgotten all the good things that I've done. Well, with all due respect, again, from a place of self-love, I don't need you in my life. If that's your approach. But people just need to get courageous and understand that you're not meant to please everybody. In fact, I'd highly recommend you keep your circle of influence tighter. Stop pleasing everyone, having loads of friends or whatever it might be, because not everyone's your friend. And I learned this quote from Mike Tyson. He said, "Not everyone you fight is your enemy, and not everyone you help is your friend." And I think people need to understand that. Sometimes you're fighting the wrong people. There's people who actually care about you, and they're telling you stuff. They're telling you to slow down. They're telling you to look after yourself because they care. They don't fight them. They're not your enemy. But all these other people that you're busy helping, they're not all your friends either. So keep your circle tight. Love yourself more. Learn to say no. Even if you've only got 20 minutes each morning to dedicate for yourself, do it. Do it. Just don't get involved with other people's stuff. I'm not a big advocate for 5 a.m. clubs and all this nonsense. Do what works for you. But as soon as you wake up, you shouldn't be worrying about anything other than yourself. Have you hydrated? Have you journaled? Have you meditated? Have you looked after yourself first thing in the morning? Even if it's 20 minutes. I know what it's like if you've got kids and stuff. Can you wake up a little bit earlier where you've got that little bit of peace and serenity where there's no one else around? Pour into yourself for a bit. If you can't fill your own cup up, you're going to struggle.
Yeah, absolutely echo that. And it's so easy. I know even if with myself, I became complacent in terms of what I could do. So I was kind of probably saying yes too much, taking on too much, and not giving myself time in the day for me. And I think now I do, between tasks, I do give myself time throughout the day, because my day isn't a 9 till 5, you know, like as you was mentioning, and I give myself what I call non-thinking time. So it's the time when I'm not thinking, you know, I try to get off of that kind of thinking about this or that, you know. I finish a task, then I'll go out for a walk and I'll just listen and observe things around me, even if it's a half an hour. And it's and going on from what you've been saying, it works. It's massive, you know. It really is. It helps so much.
Absolutely. And there's a saying, don't be at the office if you're not at the office. And what that means is, if you're not at work, don't be at work, because most of us are still at work. We're still at work up here, so we're not present. So we're with our families, we're with our kids, and we're not present, and we're not in the moment. We're still at the office. Some of us are at the office before we get to the office, and some of us are still at the office when we leave the office in our heads. You know,
so true.
It's not cool. And your kids, if you've got kids, if anyone's listening to this and they've got kids, look, please understand that even if you've got only an hour to spend with your children in the evening, give them 110% of your focus and attention, because you won't get this time back. And you're living in a world where a lot of entrepreneurial people, especially contractor people who work self-employed, work for themselves, wherever it might be, they're giving their families what's left of them, not the best of them. And that's not right, because who are you doing this for in the first place? I get it, you're doing it for them, I understand that, but what's the point in busting your backside, working hard, stressing out, sleepless nights, all that kind of stuff, when you can't even be present with the people that you're doing it for? So, you know, it's a shame. It's just like a vicious cycle that people get caught up in, and sometimes you've got to slow down in order to speed up. And that's why I keep telling people, just stop, pause, reflect. Like, how do you? We're in, look, the time of us recording this now, we're already into the second month of 2023, and I guarantee you, people who started off on the 1st of January with all the best intentions to do things differently, they've all fallen into the same old habits. And many people listening to this, maybe you have, but here's the thing: New Year was sent to trick you. It's a superficial way of pressing reset. You can press reset right this very moment. You can press reset first thing tomorrow morning. So if you've fallen off the wagon, what's the best way to get back on? Just get back on. That's it, you know. So it's simple.
Absolutely fantastic. So, Jessen, tell us a bit more about your latest projects, ideas, the things you're involved in now. What your aspirations are for 2023.
Yeah. So, as you'll know, Stu, I've got a big passion for helping other people. I do own other businesses. You know, I even own my own fragrance brand and stuff and things like that. But my big passion is training and mentoring people. And for us, there's a big push this year to get people more help, and it's not just business training. It's personal development, working on yourself, health, wellness, you know, fitness, the whole lot, like looking after yourself. So we want to help more people. But as I'm an ex-psychiatric nurse, one of my biggest passions is actually your mental well-being. And I think personally, the mental well-being of entrepreneurial people is neglected. And people don't look into it enough. And I think there are probably a lot of entrepreneurial people out there that are depressed and don't even know they're depressed, you know, or suffering with some kind of anxiety or something of the sort, and they just plod along because they have to, you know. And so I suppose for me, there's a big push this year to go and help more people. I've made a lot of my trainings now more accessible. We used to do a lot of face-to-face, and we still do face-to-face trainings, but you know, I've brought a lot of my stuff online now. I have a coaching franchise as well, where I've got a lot of incredible coaches that I've personally trained, who work with me, and they help entrepreneurial people really regain balance in their lives. And we're really pushing that this year to let people know, look, you're not alone. Speak to someone. Get the help that you need, regain some kind of balance. And when I say balance isn't like a set of scales where everything's equal. There's no equilibrium in entrepreneurship. You probably spend more time with your business and your colleagues than you do your family, and I get that. However, going back to what I was saying earlier, if you are at the office, be at the office. If you are at home, be at home. So even if you've got 2 hours at home, give it 110% of your attention, because let's be honest, Stu, if you're talking to a client right now, you'd probably put your phone on silent. give them 110% of your attention. You're not thinking about anything else. But so why do we pick up the phone when we're with our kids supposed to be playing football with them?
Exactly.
There's no respect, there's no balance. So when I say balance, it means whatever you're doing, give it 110% of your time. And I think a lot of entrepreneurial people, their health is spiraling out of control. The physical health, a lot of them are obese, putting on weight, at risk of heart disease, cholesterol, diabetes, all this kind of stuff. So they're not looking after themselves. They're not looking after their headspace. They're going at 100 miles per hour. And here's the biggest problem. They're abusing their bodies and their minds so much to the point where they might not be able to work. So if anyone listening to this right now, I've got a really strong message to share with you. If you get hospitalized for the next 6 months and cannot work, what's going to happen to your business? What's going to happen to your loved ones who rely on your income? So you are actually, and I'm going to say this with the utmost love and respect, but I do want to shock you into listening to what I'm saying right now. You're not actually an asset to your family, you're a liability. That's what you are. Because everything that you do is in your head. Everything that you do is trading your time for money, and therefore you're a liability. You are not someone that your family can rely on, because you don't have, unless you've got investments and whatnot, you do not have another way to pay your bills other than work. Therefore, if you get sick, you get hurt, you get run over, have an accident, whatever it might be, especially in the construction industry. Do you know how many friends I know who's fallen off the ladders? Can't work. Yeah? Didn't think about it. Then you are not an asset to your family. And look, I know it's your audience. I'm not just saying your audience are men, but a lot of men see that themselves as providers for their family. And well, with all due respect, unless you are producing assets for them to rely on the income off of that rather than you being the asset, then you're not actually an asset. You are a liability, and it's a dangerous place to be in. And I'm saying that to everyone so that you wake up and you do something different right now. Look after yourself before it's too late.
I've seen on the threads of LinkedIn, Jessen, that when we talk about some of the plights of the small businesses and owners that you're talking about, and who can be listening, they could be from consultants to trades. I quite often see a message now and again saying, "Can we talk about mental health?" And I think people this year, is the year people do want to talk about it. People do want to open up about it. People do want to identify with their values, and they do want to find out how they can match their work-life balance, how they can address the ways in which they can be a liability to themselves, their families, and also for those in the supply chain, those higher up. How can developers, contractors think about the effect of their actions down the line into the supply chain, and how they're affecting those small business owners, their families, and their communities? And there's a wonderful message and teaching that you do. How can people listening get in touch with you, find out a bit more about your coaching, and so they can get some support, the support they need?
Thank you, Stu. I appreciate that. Look, I think before people get in touch, you just got to ask yourself, what do you need help with? Because I contrary to popular belief in the coaching and mentoring industry, I don't just work with anyone who's got a pulse and a checkbook. I want to make sure people know what they want. The problem hurts enough for them to want to do something about it, because for example, you go into the gym right now, especially at this time of the day, you'll see loads of people in the gym who are there not because they want to be, it's because they've been prescribed it. They've been told, if you don't go and look after yourself, you're going to have a heart attack. And unfortunately, we live in a reactive society, not a proactive one. So when I say it needs to hurt enough, people need to understand that I want your situation to be painful enough. Why? So that you do something about it. Because if it's not uncomfortable, you don't move. That's how people are. So it's pointless getting in touch with me and my team unless you're absolutely 10 out of 10 committed to solving some kind of pain that you're in right now. Now, what kind of pain can I potentially help you with? Well, definitely with your mental well-being. Like right now, if you're struggling with your own mindset, you find yourself being quite negative at times. You find yourself spiraling out of control. You find yourself feeling like, you're having some of your darkest moments, or you feel like every day's Groundhog Day. You're just struggling. You're grinding it out, and no one's around to help, and no one understands you. Maybe not even your partner. You just feel like really alone right now. I can help you with that. If you're feeling like your business is out of out of control right now, the leads are not coming in, the cash flow is not there. The sales aren't coming in. You're not as profitable as you used to be, or you're working too much, trading too much time for money. Need to create more assets. Need to systemize your business so you're working less and getting paid more. I can help you with that. If you want your sales to go up, we can help you with that. So we have so many different avenues to coach and mentor people, and we make them super affordable as well. We're not crazy money. If you want to work with me personally, it will be crazy money. But that's fine, because I have clients who are in different stages of their life. If you're doing multiple 7 figures, then hit me up. Of course, I'd love to work with you. But if you're in early stages, or you're 6 figures, or just about, or whatever it might be, you're just finding yourself and you need some help with your personal, professional, financial life, then we can help you. I've got some world-class mentors and coaches who work with me, who I've personally trained, who can help you. So if you want to do that, and you're 10 out of 10 motivated to solving your problem, just drop us an email on success@jessenjames.com, or drop me a DM on any of my social media handles, all at @JessenJames_official. But if you send an email, success@jessenjames.com, and that's success as in the word success, JESSEN James.com. Just drop us an email. Just say, look, I heard you on Stu's podcast, and make sure you let us know that you came from Stu, so we know to look after you. And then we'll see what we can do for you. We can have an impartial chat with one of my team. They'll be able to give you some free advice. You might not even need us after that, because we give willingly. And if you do want to carry on working with us, you can. We can have a chat about that.
Oh, that's perfect. And what I'll do, Jessen, is I'll put those links into the podcast notes when the episode goes out, so people can watch the podcast, and then if they need to get in touch, they want to get in touch, they're committed, they can click on the button and then come straight through to you.
Yeah, absolutely that. And what I will do as well, Stu, is if you let my Francesca know after this, we'll send you a link that they can just directly book in a consultation with our team. And anyone who comes via you guys, we'll gift them a free complimentary session that they can have with the team and get some advice, so that we can look after some of your people as well.
Oh, that's amazing. Thank you so much, Jessen.
No problem.
Time for a quick fire round?
Yeah.
Okay. So quick questions then. Starting with, how do you start your day?
I love this question, because people often think that I get up at 5 a.m, meditate, zen out, all that. I don't. I actually don't. I don't do any of that. But how I start my day is I do get up early. I hydrate straight away. And then I get ready and I go to the gym. I go and work out. That's what I do. It's my time. It's for myself. So I like to take that time out for myself, because I need to fill my cup before I start the day. And I also like starting the day off like that, because then I feel like I've achieved something. And I like to get it done nice and early before everyone else, and then it's done and it's dusted. And then and then I'm up at it. Family time, kids, and then straight to work if I want to do some work. Yeah.
When are you most productive?
That's a great one. I fluctuate, and I recommend everyone figures out what their times are. But I can be super productive early morning. Mid-morning, I kind of have a little bit of a lag. And then probably mid-afternoon, I'll pick up again. And then if I'm not careful, because it stops me from sleeping, I can get very creative at night.
What's something new happening in your life right now?
Our new coaching franchise, actually, because it's exciting, because we're going global. We are literally going to be taking over the coaching space by storm, by giving people what they actually need with proper qualified coaches. So that excites me, because I know it's the ripple effect. I can't change the world, but together we can, and I'm really excited about that.
What does adventure look like to you?
Adventure looks like doing what you want, whenever you want, with whoever you want, however the heck you want.
What thing would you love to do that might surprise your friends and family?
Well, do you know what? I don't think enough of my friends or family know that I love cooking. I love cooking. I'm a great cook. I've watched my mum from a young age, and it used to be my go-to thing at university. So I'm really good at cooking. And what I'd love to do, and I have been speaking at this, but I haven't told many people. I actually want to do a chefing course. I really want to learn how to be a chef.
Name a challenge you overcame that changed your life.
I'd say getting made redundant from my job. And what I mean by that is it taught me, I think, a skill that a lot of people are lacking, and that is self-leadership and responsibility. And it's taking ownership has massively changed my life. I'm no longer at the disposal of everybody else. I control everything in my life because I take responsibility for it.
Who or what inspires and motivates you?
Do you know what? It's twofold. My kids massively inspire me. Why? Because they're my why. They're my driver. They're the reason why I carry on going, even if things get tough and things get hard or I can't be bothered. And so they're my driver. But they also inspire me because I think as adults, we lose our ability to be childlike. We lose our inquisitive nature. We lose our curiosity. We lose our obsession. So my kids inspire me. And then my clients, the public, they inspire me. Why? Because a lot of people have challenges, and you kind of inspire me to want to contribute and help and serve. So it gives my life a deeper sense of meaning and purpose.
What does success mean for you?
I'm going to go back to my adventure answer. It means doing whatever you want, whenever you want, with whoever you want, however the heck you want.
And finally, what advice would you give to your young self?
I'd go back and tell my young self that everything's going to be fine just the way it is. You don't change anything that happens in your life, because you'll change who you are. Everything that's going to go on in your life is going to shape you, but just know you're going to land on your feet, buddy.
Thanks, Jessen. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Fantastic.
Thank you very much, Stu. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
You've been listening to Construction Cashflow. Hit the subscribe button if you haven't already done so you never miss an episode. And remember, the faster cash flows, the faster wealth grows.